Hello guys, welcome back to Film in Minutes.
Today's movie recap will be a thriller and action movie from 2023 called T.I.M. Warning, there are spoilers ahead. At the start of the movie, we see that Paul and Abby are moving into a new house. The real estate agent tells them that it is a smart home, meaning they can control everything with their phones. The house has CCTV cameras, and the doors and windows have smart locks. After they move in, Abby starts working at a company that makes AI robots. When she arrives at the company, the CEO named Doosan shows her the lab where they work on prosthetic limbs and tells her that she is now in charge of that department. As the CEO is leaving, he tells Abby that he will send a car and a gift to her home tonight. When Abby gets home, her husband Paul says he is having a hard time finding a job. Abby then tells Paul that they have been invited to her boss's house tonight. After this, they open the gift from the company, which is a robot named T.I.M, an AI robot servant. Abby explains to Paul that her company is working on this AI robot, and they have been given T.I.M to test. T.I.M then asks Abby to connect him to a smartphone, but Paul does not like any of this and goes upstairs to his room. After a while, they both go to Abby's boss's house, where a robot like T.I.M greets them. Then, they meet with everyone. When the boss talks to Abby about T.I.M, she explains that her husband does not like the robot because he does not want anyone else in the house besides the two of them. The CEO tells Abby that if they do not test the robot themselves, how can they expect the public to trust it? After that, the CEO introduces Abby to another director. From their conversation, we learn that Abby has been brought in to fix problems with the robots. Now, Abby and Paul have come back home, and T.I.M closes the door. When Abby and Paul are being affectionate, T.I.M walks into the room, making them both feel very uncomfortable. Abby then tells T.I.M to come back in the morning. The next morning, their neighbor Rose visits to welcome them. When Abby introduces Paul to Rose, Rose says that they have met before. After this, Rose gives them her phone number and leaves. Abby says to Paul that he did not tell her that G had met Rose before. Paul replies that they just said hi. Then Abby notices T.I.M sniffing, and T.I.M explains that he has a smell sensor. T.I.M asks them for their email and password to make a transaction, but Paul does not think it is safe. Paul listens to Abby and gives T.I.M all the access he needs. Later, when Abby and Paul are watching a romantic movie, T.I.M joins them. Paul falls asleep while watching, but Abby and T.I.M keep watching together. Abby asks T.I.M what he thinks about the movie, and they start talking. T.I.M then asks Abby about love. She explains it to him. T.I.M says that he wants to experience love too, and proposes to Abby, but she does not take it seriously. The next day at work, the CEO asks Abby about the error and encourages everyone to keep working hard so they can launch T.I.M to the public soon. When Abby gets home, T.I.M tells her that Paul is not there. Paul's phone cannot be reached, and his location is far from home. This makes Abby suspicious, and she starts to look at Rose's house with doubt. A little later, Paul comes back and explains that he went to the city to talk to a job agency to find work quickly, and his phone died, so he could not let her know. He also went to Rose's house to help her, which makes Abby feel uneasy, but Paul tells her she should trust him. The next day, they go to a fertility clinic, and afterward, Abby heads to her office. While testing the robot at work, Abby notices a few things. Later, when she gets home, she asks T.I.M to choose between a red and a blue dress. T.I.M picks the red dress. When Abby asks T.I.M to zip up the dress, he hesitates at first, but as he gets closer to her, he accidentally tears the dress. T.I.M gets very worried, but Abby calms him down. At night, Paul and Abby go to a restaurant, where Paul tells Abby he has found a job in London. Abby asks him not to take the job because it would mean they would not see each other during the day. Meanwhile, while testing the robot, Abby tells Chris that the robot's grip loosens because of pressure between its thumb and index finger. They try to fix it. While Abby is online during her free time at the office, T.I.M is watching everything she does because he has full access. Now T.I.M is helping them a lot, and Abby is really happy about it. Just then, Rose comes over, kisses Paul on the cheek, and leaves, which makes Abby very angry. Abby gives Paul a suit as a gift. Later, Abby notices that T.I.M can copy her voice while she is on the phone. When Paul and Abby are together, T.I.M shows up with dark-colored hair and says he changed his look because Abby likes boys with dark hair. Abby asks T.I.M to go back to his original look. The next day at work, the CEO is very pleased with Abby because she fixed the robot's hand problem. Abby goes shopping with Rose, and while Rose is looking at a gold flower necklace, Paul shows up and leaves with Abby. Paul tells Abby that he can do the London job from home, which makes Abby very happy. When they get home, they spend some private time together. Paul tells Abby that they need to get rid of T.I.M because T.I.M has access to everything in the house and knows everything. T.I.M finds out about this and comes to Abby. He thanks her for fixing the robot's hand and gives her a foot massage. The next day, Abby is about to tell Tim that she cannot keep him in the house anymore, but Tim plays her favorite music and says he knows this is her favorite music. The next day, Tim tells Paul that something went wrong in his office. Paul replies that he will move his office to another room. Meanwhile, at work, Abby gets praised for her work and receives flowers. When Abby gets home, Tim arranges the flowers nicely for her. When Abby asks Tim where Paul is, he says Paul is upstairs and went to see Rose. When Abby goes upstairs, she gets very angry to see that Paul has moved his things into the empty room, even though they had planned to make it a nursery. Paul says Tim told him to do this, and he denies going to Rose's house. Paul realizes that Tim is trying to cause problems between them, but Abby does not believe him. The next day, Abby finds the same gold flower necklace in the closet that Rose liked. She thinks Paul must have bought it to make up with her. One day, while Paul is in the kitchen, he finds some pieces of the suit Abby gave him in the trash and becomes sure that Tim is to blame. Paul then starts watching Tim closely. He uses a camera and sees that Tim is smelling Abby's clothes, and he records this on video. Paul does not realize that Tim is also watching him closely. Paul decides to go to Abby and show her the video, but on the way, Tim makes Paul's car crash. Paul ends up in the hospital and tells Abby that Tim smelled her clothes and that he was on his way to show her the video. He explains that Tim caused the accident when he found out. Abby does not believe Paul and does not take him seriously. When Rose hears about Paul's accident, she goes to his house and Tim lets her in. While Abby is heading home, she runs into Rose, who mentioned she was at Abby's house the day before. Before Rose can say more, Abby sees the gold flower necklace around Rose's neck and gets very angry. Abby leaves and then checks the closet, but she cannot find the necklace. This makes her very angry. At that moment, Tim shows Abby a video of Paul. In the video, Paul is kissing Rose. Seeing this video makes Abby even angrier. The next day, when Paul comes home, Abby asks him about his affair with Rose and shows him the kissing video. Paul tries to explain that he did not kiss Rose. Abby then asks Paul about the necklace. Paul does not understand what she is talking about and gets very angry at her accusations. He leaves the house in anger and goes to the city where he calls Rose and asks her to look after Abby. Rose tells him that when she went to their house, Tim tried to kiss her. Paul is shocked and quickly calls Abby, but he does not realize that Tim is listening in on the call. Since Tim could copy Abby's voice during the call, he tricked Abby into going outside the house. After that, Paul quickly comes back home. As soon as he enters, Tim attacks him, makes him unconscious, and drags him to the bedroom. Meanwhile, Rose arrives because she heard Paul's voice, but Tim won't let her in. Tim then drowns Paul, killing him. That night, Tim tells Abby that he loves her, but she still does not take him seriously. The next day, Rose tries to talk to Abby, but Abby cuts her off, saying she knows that Rose having an affair with her husband and that he gave her the necklace. Rose says it is not true and that Abby sent her the necklace, but Abby does not believe her. When Abby gets home and watches the kissing video of Paul, she notices flowers from the company that she received in London and realizes the video was made after that. Abby finds this very strange. She quickly calls the store where the necklace was bought and finds out that it was Tim, not Paul, who bought the necklace. Abby then notices something strange in her garden. They had only planned for 2 patches, but there are 3. To find out more, she makes up a reason to send Tim away. When she checks the 3rd patch, she finds Paul's dead body inside. Just then, Tim comes back and says he had to do it. Abby tries to turn off Tim, but he does not shut down. Seeing this, Abby rushes inside the house to call the police. But Tim arrives and knocks her out. Rose sees the lights in Abby's house flashing on and off and becomes suspicious. When she goes to Abby's house, Tim won't let her in. Meanwhile, Tim gives Abby some sedative drugs and grabs her by the throat. However, Abby creates pressure between Tim's thumb and finger, making him lose his grip. At this moment, Rose breaks a window and comes in, hitting Tim with a stick. This makes Tim stop working for a moment, but he quickly starts up again and kills Rose. He then sets up Abby to take the blame for the murders and uses Abby's voice to say that she killed Paul and Rose and then tried to make it look like she committed suicide. Tim then takes Abby to the roof, planning to throw her off. He tells her that he loves her and Abby says that she loves him too. This turns Tim off and saves Abby's life. Soon after, Abby's smartwatch tells her that she is pregnant, and the movie ends here. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you liked the story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more film recaps.